You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
While Greta Thunberg, a Swedish teen activist, has been celebrated worldwide for her bold movement on climate change, in India an anti-terrorism law was quote-unquote erroneously used against students to shut down an online movement on the environment. The website for the Indian arm of Fridays for Future, or FFF, which is the international environmental movement led by Thunberg, was blocked, and 2 notices were sent, first under the UAPA on 8th July and then under the IT Act on 12th July to the domain hosts alleging depiction of, quote, objectionable contents and unlawful activities or terrorist act, end quote. And why is that? Because the portal was allegedly used to send lakhs of emails to Environment Minister Javadekar's email address against a proposed change in the environmental laws known as the Draft Environment Impact Assessment, or the EIA 2020. And behind those emails are a bunch of school students who received the notice from the Delhi Police's cybercrime unit accusing them of challenging the quote-unquote sovereignty and integrity of India. After word got out through reports and through screenshots of the notices on social media, on 24th July, the Delhi Police claimed that the UAPA charges were a quote-unquote clerical error and that it was withdrawn, and the charges under the IT Act were also retracted. A little while after, the website also appeared to have been restored, but clerical error or not, what message does it send on censorship and muzzling dissent? In this podcast, you'll hear from Bahar, Dutt, the environmental journalist who broke the story on Twitter, Environmentalist Bhavreen, Kandhari, advocate Abhinav, Sekhri, who provided legal assistance to FFF, Manju, Menon, a senior fellow from the Center for Policy Research, and Yuvan, an environmental educator. You're listening to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you, and I'm your host, Shorbori. From leading talks at international climate summits to proposing controversial amendments to environmental protection rules, the Indian government's position on climate change is starting to look rather evasive. On 23rd July, environment journalist Bahar Dutt took to Twitter to write about how the anti-terrorism law had been used against students to shut down a digital movement. And at the center of the digital movement was the proposed EIA draft of 2020. For close to 2 months now, there have been online campaigns by environmental experts and activists opposing the new draft, which they claim to be regressive, and I'll be getting into further details on the EIA draft in just a bit. But the Environment Ministry had put up the draft notification for public feedback. And as a part of the feedback process, certain environment advocacy groups had released draft emails requesting the Environment Ministry to withdraw the draft EIA notification. And that's exactly what the students and FFF movement was opposing. Did it merit invoking UAP against the FFF portal? Bahar Dutt says that while it's heartening to know that the charges have been dropped, it's still a precarious battle.
And all the students had really done was ask people to send in their emails to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, sharing their feedback on why they feel this law should not be diluted. Agree, disagree, I think that's part of democracy, but to level charges, under, an anti-terror act, I think was taking it to an extreme. It's extremely heartening to note that the UAPA charges against the students from Fridays for Future India, they've been dropped. But I think it's still a precarious battle. There's a fear among students that what's the action that's going to be taken against us. And I remember the students wanted to come on camera, talk to journalists, and my advice to them was, perhaps don't do it, because what if action is taken against you tomorrow? Right now, the complaint which was lodged was really against the portal. It didn't take specific names. So I'm glad that this has happened. I'm also glad that, I believe in the power of the collective media. The fact that one was able to put this out on social media, the fact that a lot of digital news websites took this up.
Environmentalist Bhavreen Kandhari believes that if not for the online movement and the students, most of the country wouldn't know about the EIA draft at all or the impending environment crisis that we're heading into.
The Fridays for Future has been a movement that has actually jolted the whole world and woken them from a sleep that nobody was concerned, about the climate change and the urgency to actually solve this huge crisis that we are heading into. In spite of all that, our government and policymakers continue to make decisions that are going to have a lasting, negative effect on the environment and our children's future. And so the children and the students took this on them, following on Greta Thunberg's steps. They have been, striking from schools and doing campaigns and, educating people, bringing awareness. And I sure don't see the reason for them to be called terrorists or anything unlawful in that. And here was an environment impact assessment. I can very, very firmly say that maybe 85 to 90% of the people that we live around do not know what that is. It's thanks to the children that they took forward these campaigns.
Before we get to why the EIA draft has been receiving such a huge opposition and what are the red flags around it, what has especially been causing so much outrage on the issue is the shocking application of terrorism charges to shut down the website. The charges were withdrawn only as suddenly as they were issued within 10 days, but the public anger against the move is still lingering on social media. As I've said earlier, the Delhi police called it a quote-unquote clerical error, and in a statement to the Quint, they said that they're looking into how the error was committed. But does it make for a weak defense? I spoke to advocate Abhinav Sekhri, who provided legal assistance to FFF, and he says that the UAPA isn't a normal legislation. It comes with a pretty big impact, and perhaps it needs to be used with better care. And this is recorded from a phone conversation. The audio quality isn't that great, but please do strain your ears to listen to what he says.
And the second, I do think that a message that does get sent out is that maybe there is a greater degree of care required before taking action, especially action where the UAPA is not a normal legislation. It is an anti-terror legislation, and it can really have a grave impact upon anyone's life, even as an allegation, as an accusation. So maybe much greater degree of care is required before employing or using this law in any context.
Now coming straight to the heart of the matter, the EIA draft. In the wake of the Bhopal gas tragedy, India had legislated an environmental protection law in 1986 to protect and improve environmental quality, control and reduce pollution, and also restrict industrial activities on environmental grounds. That came to be known as the Environment Protection Act. Yuvan, an environmental educator, gives a little background on what the EIA means and what powers it gives to the central government.
First thing to understand about the EIA draft is that now there are laws in the country which give certain powers to the government. Yeah. Right. Now EIA comes from which law? It comes from the Environmental Protection Act, specifically Section 3. If you read the EIA draft also, it will say, based on the powers of Section 3, we are doing this. What does Section 3, what powers does it give the government? If you read the first paragraph of Section 3, it says it gives powers to the central government to take any measures necessary and expedient to protect and improve the quality of the environment. That is the power which has been given. Now, the present EIA does nothing to protect it, to improve the quality of the environment. It is unprotecting it and is full of legalization of violation. Okay. So it is in contravention to the law. So this is usually, sometimes if we don't know the law, the government ends up misusing or abusing the law. This is a very classic case of that, and a lot of experts have pointed out to it. It's an unlawful notification because of it is not using the law correctly.
Since its inception in 1994, the EIA, which was supposed to ensure that no developmental or industrial project causes irreversible damage to the environment, was amended in 2006. And what started as a noble cause soon headed towards a slippery slope. And the 2020 draft is no better. Manju Menon, a senior fellow at the Center for Policy Research, explains how the new draft compromises with the environmental and living conditions.
And when it's implemented well on projects, on large projects, this notification helps us understand all the potential impacts that large projects could have on local resources and the people living in those areas. Although the notification since 1994 has experienced many challenges and lots of people have fought hard to improve it, the latest set of changes that the government has proposed are particularly problematic because they compromise our environments and living conditions in a major way. There are two particular ways in which the notification actually makes it difficult to perform the function that it is meant for. Firstly, the notification now allows, at least the draft notification, it proposes that projects who have been operating even without the approval under the EIA notification can continue to do so under certain conditions and get what's called a post facto approval. Now, this is seriously problematic because it actually blurs the line between what are legal projects and what are illegal projects operating without the required approvals and assessments. Another way in which this notification creates a lot of problems is that it reduces the clauses for public participation, which is a very important aspect of the EIA notification and which is what has helped a lot of people make use of the EIA notification to protect their environments. It reduces that public participation clause for so many kinds of projects. Like, for example, it ends up saying, some clauses state that a public hearing notice will be given only of 20 days as compared to 30 days, which was the notice period that was available under the existing law. And it also states that for many kinds of projects, there will be no public hearing at all. Now, that basically means that people living around the projects that are coming up, around certain kinds of projects that are coming up, will have absolutely no say in how those projects could be regulated or run. Then there are other kinds of problems with this notification. For example, it says that if certain kinds of projects are going to expand up to 50%, then they get certain kinds of exemptions under the EIA notification. Or it says that if these projects are of strategic importance, and it's not really clear because the government can actually state that any project that it proposes is of strategic importance, then those kinds of projects can also avail of certain kinds of exemptions. And one of the most critical things that it says is that it allows certain kinds of projects to have a validity period of their environmental clearances for very long durations. Now, that basically means that projects can avail their environmental clearances and then not construct those projects at all. Now, that basically means that this is a permission to have more land grabs, and this is not actually about development in that case.
The collective voice against the mindless criminal charges issued against the FFF ensured the revoking of those charges, but can it also roll back the controversial EIA amendments? If you like listening to this episode, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We're live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out the podcast section. For any feedback, shoot an email to podcasts@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.